How's it going, guys? Today we are going to be working on the CRX B20 motor. I told you in the last video that I actually had to take the cylinder head in and get all the valves checked and reseated and everything like that, because it had two bent intake valves, so had to get that sorted out. That's all good to go now. And I had an issue where the connecting rod wasn't fitting into the piston. The connecting rod, I'll show you. The small end here up top is too wide and doesn't fit into the piston. So I actually had to take them to the machine shop again, and I talked to the guy at the machine shop, and he's like, oh yeah, sure, I'll just cut the small end of the rod down a little bit so it fits into the piston, because it was super close. It almost fit, but just a little bit too tight for comfort. You know, you can't just make it work. So I just got back from picking my cylinder head up and the connecting rods and everything back from him. He actually didn't have any time to do the connecting rods, and I said, I don't care, I'm gonna save a couple bucks and I don't have to spend it now to pay him to do it, and I'm just gonna take these connecting rods right to the cutoff wheel and with the grinder wheel, and just hog it off myself. Because I mean, really, that's all the machine shop's gonna do, is they're gonna use a special tool and it's gonna cut the small end of the rod down, and then they're just gonna measure it, put it on a scale, and give it back to you. Disclaimer, I know you shouldn't do this at home. I would also love to thank everybody for the support and the comments that you guys left on the last video. Definitely made my day, for all the support that you guys give me and the encouragement to keep me doing these videos for you guys. I actually had quite a bit of people emailing too about remote tuning and consultations with their builds. Kind of help people along. I kind of love helping people out, and I love helping people out, and giving as much assistance as I can, whether it be over the phone or emailing or through these YouTube videos. I also still have the stickers for sale, guys. If you want to purchase them, there is an eBay link in the description for HunterTuned stickers. I know it's not, I don't have any cool merchandise or anything, but I do have stickers. I've had them for quite a while, and I usually give them to customers and stuff like that. I also had the initial price when I put them on the eBay listing. It was a little bit high because I didn't know what the shipping was going to be, but now they are $5.99 with free shipping, so you guys can go purchase them if you would like. If not, as long as you guys are watching, that's awesome as well. I already got one of these connecting rods ground down with the bench grinder here, or not bench grinder, but the cutoff wheel. I just have a a grinding disc on it, so I can grind down the rod. And this is what we're working with so far. I just cutting down the small end of the rod here. This one's already done and it fits. So now I can take the piston here and show you, and the rod fits right in, and it's got plenty of clearance on both sides. It doesn't really move back and forth much. You need about 100 thousandths clearance on both sides technically. And then after I ground this rod down with the grinding wheel here, I actually had to clean out the inside of the bore here where the wrist pin goes, because obviously there was some burrs and stuff in there. So I actually just took a piece of grinding stone. I don't know where the hell I put it now. I just took this thing. This is a thing that I use for cylinder honing. This is just part of the cylinder hone that I use, and it's just kind of like a smooth stone. And yeah, it worked great for cleaning out the inside of the bushing there where the wrist pin goes, and now it slides in and out like butter. This video is proudly brought to you by JP's Casper White Stout. This beer is made in Stevens Point, Wisconsin, right here locally, about an hour away from my house. Cheers. Now let's put this motor together. Trust me, guys, I know the risk involved with doing this. The rod probably isn't going to be 100% perfectly balanced. It's probably not a good idea to be doing this, but it's probably also not a good idea to buy $200 rods with ARP 2000 knockoff bolts. Like these don't even say ARP or anything on them. They're a clone of the ARP 2000 bolt. It's probably also not a good idea to run high compression and boost like everybody says, and it's probably not a good idea to run a cast piston with a turbo like everybody else says. But this is my own car, my own project, and I'm just trying to see if any of this stuff will work. I obviously wouldn't be doing this on a customer car. This is, like I said, just for me and my own experiments. So I hope you guys understand that. I just don't want to cause confusion in the comments or anything like that with you guys, kind of hating on what I'm doing here, because this is just, like I said, it's an experiment. I'm just playing around and seeing what we can make work out of nothing, pretty much. I just got the connecting rods all ground down. The wrist pin fits like butter, and they all fit into the piston now. So now I'm going to be attaching the connecting rods to the pistons. Now, when you take the connecting rod here and insert it into the piston, you definitely want to put some oil on the connecting rod here in the inside, as well as the piston and on the wrist pin. I oil everything quite a bit before I go to install everything. So I'll just put the connecting rod in the vise quick so we can get this all attached. Get it nice and oiled up. Like I said, get some oil in the piston and on the wrist pin. I'm just using regular engine oil here. This is Schaefer's engine oil, which is what I use on pretty much everything I run. My Subaru WRX that I have runs nothing but Schaefer's, and I love running it in Hondas because it seems like it really helps lubrication to the bottom end bearings a lot better than a lot of the other oils, and it definitely works good with high RPM applications. So now you just got to line the holes up and push it all together, just like that. Now the piston moves back and forth freely. Everything seems happy. Not really a direction that you need to put the piston onto the rod. It usually doesn't matter what way you put the piston on the rod. The only thing that I've noticed is actually kind of an issue is you'd want to put them all on the same way. It doesn't matter what way, but just put them all on the same way. So if your intake side of your piston is on where the writing is on the connecting rod, just make sure you do that the same way on every one, and you won't have any issues. Now when you insert this into the motor, that is critical because you want to make sure the biggest valve relief is on the intake side. The intake valves are always bigger, 99% of the time at least, and you want to make sure that you put those in the right way, because if you don't, you could have valve interference with your pistons. Now all the pistons are connected onto the connecting rods. It's just pretty simple. You just got to take the circlip here, and I just use a needle nose pliers and get it into the groove, and then yeah, do that on both sides. And they are all set. The rods are on the pistons. Now we can put the rings onto the pistons. What you should do is you should check the ring gap first. I actually already did this. I did the ring gap already on this motor. You just pretty much take the ring and put it into the bore and measure it with a feeler gauge. And these ones out of the box are really good. This is like a 26 thousandths on the top and a 30 on the bottom. That's how they are out of the box. And honestly, every single set of Hondas that I've built, I've never touched the rings because they seem to be pretty damn good out of the box. So yeah, fun tech tip there, that usually these rings are pretty good out of the box. So if this is like your first motor you're building, a lot of times, like I said, the rings, you don't really need to gap them on these, because at least from my experiences, I've built like 10 or 15 of these motors by now, and they all seem to be pretty good ring gap out of the box. We are going to put the rings onto the pistons, and we're going to start with the oil ring. You always want to start with the lowest ring and then work your way up. At least it seems to be easier that way when I do it. Now the third groove here, or the bottommost ring land area here, gets the oil ring. Each piston will get one of these guys. It's like a spring style ring. These are really kind of flimsy, and they got like grooves in them like this. Hopefully you can see that. So it doesn't matter what way up or down you put this one. Like I said, this just goes kind of in the groove, just like that. I literally just did that with one hand. That's how easy these ones are to put on. And on each oil ring, they each get 2 of the smaller rings. So one of these rings will go on the top of this oil control ring, and then one of these will go on the bottom of it, and that kind of holds it tight into the piston. Then once you get the ring fully installed, both small ones on top and bottom, it should look something like this. We're going to continue and put the oil rings on for the rest of the pistons. Be installing the second piston ring. These ones actually you have to put them in a certain way. The dot on the piston ring here, you can see it there. That dot needs to face up towards the cylinder head when you install this ring. Just kind of got to work it around. Get it into the slot. Just like so. Also, when you put the piston rings in, you always want to make sure that the second ring and the top ring are completely opposite of each other. So the opening on the second ring is on the intake side. I'll make sure when I put the top ring on that it goes on the opposite side of the piston. We are putting the pistons into the motor. And always remember, the big relief on the piston is the intake side. So I got 3 of them in already. As you can see here, obviously I got to clean a lot of this shit up and blow all the junk out of there. But yeah, intake side is actually labeled on these. So yeah, now we just got to get the last one in here, and we will be all set. Sorry if you can't hear me very good. The heater is on. It's cold as shit in Wisconsin. I think last night it got down to like 11 or 12 degrees Fahrenheit. So like 20 below Celsius or something like that. But anyways, like I said with the piston rings, you always want to make sure they're 180 degrees apart. And then just take your piston ring compressor, put it over the piston. Tighten the piston ring compressor onto the piston, like so, and then slam this bitch in. Before I hit the piston into the motor, I like to flatten out the ring compressor, so just hit the top of it like this, and then just hold it down, hold the piston ring compressor down as you hit the piston into the motor. If you don't hold this down, a ring sometimes will slip out of the ring compressor, and then you'll be jammed up and the piston won't actually go into the motor. Like that. Yeah, that didn't work out that good. This is kind of a downfall with these cheap piston ring compressors. They don't usually work the greatest every single time, especially on smaller bores like this. The piston ring compressor actually has a harder time making a true circle. It works great on like LS motors with a bigger piston, but since these things are freaking small, you know, it might take a try or two to be able to get it into the bore. You don't want to force it, because if you force it, you could actually break a piston ring. I don't know if I got to tighten this thing tighter or what. The first 3 literally went right in, and now I turned the freaking camera on to do the last one, and I look like an idiot. Everything looks okay. Maybe we just got to get it tighter. That's as tight as it goes. right in. Maybe I just didn't have it tight enough, I don't know. It went right in though. There is the pistons installed into the motor and, you know, connected to the rods and everything like that, so we'll move on and flip this thing over. I am going to install the rod and main bearings. So I got the engine flipped over, as you can see. Now we are looking at it from the bottom, and pretty much just need to clean the surfaces off as good as you can for the main bearings, and then just take a bearing. Take your bearing here and put it into the slot. Although this is for the top side of the cap, and then the bottom side of the cap actually has an indentation on the, I would say it's the left side, and the top cap has it on the middle. Alright, I worked my way through the package there, and now you can see how the bearing goes in. This literally just pushes in. Note that you do not want to lube the back side of the bearing. You only want to lube the front side of the bearing that's actually going to touch the crankshaft. If you lube the back side of the bearing, you actually risk the ability for the bearing to spin, because the back side needs to be a friction fit. I'm going to continue here putting these bearings in, and we will catch up when I get them installed. I am running King engine bearings. These are actually the ones I prefer for Hondas, at least, because I've ran the ACL race bearings before. I've ran the King race bearings. I've ran the King cheap ones. And I've honestly had the best luck with these cheap ass King bearings. These aren't the race version, and they seem to work really well. The reason I think I like them is because these ones are a little bit looser of a fit, like a looser tolerance compared to ACLs. I've noticed that ACL race bearings are actually a tighter tolerance than these ones, at least from the experience that I've done. Could be different from somebody else's, but yeah. These ones definitely give it a little bit of a looser tolerance, and you don't really want a super tight tolerance on your connecting rod bearings or main bearings if you're going to be revving the engine very hard. I mean, these engines see north of 8,000 RPM pretty much on a daily basis. So you don't really want to run a tight tolerance between the crankshaft and the connecting rod, or the crankshaft and the main cap either. The tighter the tolerance is, the hotter the bearing will get, the higher you rev it. So the more heat, you're kind of more prone to spinning the bearing and causing the engine to develop a knock. After you get all the bearings installed into the engine, the main bearings are all here on the bottom side, and then all the rod bearings are also installed on the bottom side, or top side, whatever you want to call it. We're going to be putting the crankshaft in next, but good note here is you need to install the thrust washers on the side of the second journal in from the flywheel side. And there's like little indentations on the thrust washer. You want to make sure those are out and not facing in. And we'll just put those in like so. And then we'll get some oil on all this and make sure that the bearings have oil on them before we assemble it. And we'll put the crankshaft in next. Now I got the bottom end completely assembled. I wouldn't say completely, but I got the rods attached to the crank, and I got the crank bolted down. Everything is torqued to spec. And yeah. For these Chinese rods, I kind of just went with the normal ARP rod bolt spec, which is like 30 foot-pounds, and torqued them all down. Now all that is left to do on the bottom end is I have to put the oil pump on, put some gasket sealer around this before I put it on, and then the rear main seal I have to put on as well, and the windage tray and the pickup tube that connects to the oil pump. Flip this thing around so you can see it. So there it is, all in its pride and joy. I obviously don't put motors together in the I don't put motors together in like an ISO certified clean room or anything like that. Obviously I got shit laying all over, and there's like shit all over the floor, whatever. I've built motors like this for about 8 years now, and honestly every motor that I've put together has lasted pretty much forever. I've never had anything fail on me. I'm hoping that this motor is the same, you know, being that this is like a total first time thing for me and whatnot. I still hope it holds together and works good. You know, at least it's on my own car, it's not on somebody else's, so I can experiment a little bit and play around with fucking shit up a little bit and making sure everything will work. So yeah, that's gonna be it for this video, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed the video here on putting the B20Vtec bottom end together, and hopefully maybe you learned something from all my hack job shit. Yeah, so till next time, guys, we will see you in the next video. Be sure to like the video and subscribe if you are new. I appreciate all the subscribers I already have. I've definitely grown quite a bit in the last month. I've noticed that the subscriber count literally is exponentially growing, so that is a good sign. It's showing that the channel is actually growing and I'm not wasting my time here. But yeah, leave a comment. Let me know what you guys think of this hack job bottom end assembly, and we will see you in the next video. I'll probably be putting the rest of this thing together tomorrow, so I'll be looking forward to that as well. So yeah, see you later.